Direct from our newsroom in New York, this is the CBS Evening News, with Roger Mudd substituting for Walter Cronkite. And in Washington, Daniel Shore, Barry Serafin, Bob Schieffer, Dan Rather in Springfield, Illinois, Bill Curtis in San Francisco, Del Vaughn in Jackson, Mississippi, and Foster Davis in Jackson.
Good evening. On the third day of his temporary wage price freeze, President Nixon is being confronted by a growing rebellion within organized labor. The freeze caught about 150,000 workers out in approximately 360 strikes, and today some of the biggest unions involved in those strikes rejected a government appeal to go back to work. But the unrest involves just more than unions out on strike. So the administration is having a top-level team, including Labor Secretary Hodgson and White House Advisor Schultz, meet tomorrow with the AFL-CIO's Executive Council to thrash out problems. The depth of labor's dissatisfaction became apparent at several news conferences today. First, United Auto Workers President Leonard Woodcock in Boston.
But that if this administration thinks that just by an edict, by a stroke of the pen, that they can tear up our contracts, then they are saying to us they want war. And if they want war, they can have war.
Woodcock later said his 600,000 auto workers would not sit idly by if contract gains are wiped out after 90 days.
If they propose to nullify our contracts, we will consider those contracts no longer binding and will take any necessary action at a special convention which we are scheduling for the 20th of November in the city of Detroit.
At a Washington news conference, Jerry Worf, president of the State, County, and Municipal Workers Union, had this to say about the freeze.
We share with workers in the private sector the feeling that the freeze is unfair in that it falls most heavily on wage earners and salaried employees while treading lightly on major economic interests. We are waiting, but unless satisfactory answers are forthcoming shortly, our national and state organizations will begin taking the actions which they consider to be commensurate with the achievement of equity.
For 48 days, the dock strike has paralyzed shipping from Canada to Mexico. 130 vessels are tied up in some 24 ports. San Francisco Bay is stacked up with ships. The cost to the state of California alone is estimated at $17.5 million a day. Against this background, Longshoreman President Harry Bridges read a telegram denouncing President Nixon's order. Bridges vowed to continue the dock strike, saying only his men could vote to stop.
And they should not be called upon as one group of our people, as workers, to make this sacrifice. What our telegram says, that it seems to us that the President's pulled the main burden, if not the full burden, of fighting inflation on the backs of workers, the people that can least afford.
Bridges was asked if a $5,000 fine would hurt.
On me, Christ, one day's finally got to break me. Take everything I got. Okay. To repeat what Mr. Truman used to say, you can't stand the heat, stay out of that kitchen.
After 2 days of meetings with the President's new Cost of Living Council, the administration made another attempt today to clear up the confusion about the wage price freeze. Barry Serafin has that story.
The council late today issued a set of guidelines designed to answer the flood of questions prompted by the president's new policies, but confusion on other issues piled up as those answers were being provided. A major point of confusion concerns an announcement made today by the Pentagon that normal military pay raises and benefits already covered by law will be exempt from the wage price freeze. There was a series of communications between the Treasury and Defense Departments, and Deputy Defense Secretary David Packard later issued a statement saying the Pentagon intends to comply with the President's order and is awaiting specific guidelines, but that its original announcement stands in the meantime. Treasury Department officials say the Pentagon did not inform them when it made its original announcement and has now backed down. The situation remains unclear. The Cost of Living Council did cut through some of the confusion today when it met at the White House. Treasury Secretary Connolly, fellow cabinet officers, other federal officials, and key economy advisors plowed through the questions which have inundated government agencies. In issuing its set of guidelines at the end of the day, the council made clear, for example, that teachers may receive raises during the freeze only if their contract period began before last Sunday. The council also ruled that state and local government employees cannot get raises during the next 3 months. Secretary Connolly said Monday no exceptions would be made to the wage price freeze except in cases where inequity of almost major catastrophic proportions exists. Yet one exception has been confirmed. Increases in school tuitions will be permitted. The question of retroactive wage hikes has made the freeze rules more fuzzy. Retroactive raises for labor groups such as railroad and postal workers apparently are being allowed, but no future scheduled raises determined by contract. Confusion has mounted, and until things get straightened out, the Justice Department has announced there will be no severe crackdown on violators. All federal prosecutors have been instructed to take violators to court only after all avenues of seeking voluntary cooperation have been exhausted. Barry Seraphin, CBS News, Washington.
The auto industry seems to have fallen in line with the freeze. Chrysler announcing today that its new models will carry 1971 price tags. And American Motors, in advance of congressional action, said it will immediately begin refunding the 7% excise tax to customers who have bought cars since Sunday. Ford, after flip-flopping, said it will charge 71 prices for 72 models. This announcement reportedly came after a long telephone conversation between Presidential Economic Advisor Paul McCracken and Ford President Lee Iacocca.
Mother's amazing. She has arthritis, but still insists on doing the shopping, even when her legs are bothering her. She says it doesn't hurt much, but I worry about her. I must say, Bufferin helps. Plain aspirin used to upset her stomach sometimes, but Bufferin's much easier on her stomach. And you know, it relieves her minor pain for hours at a time.
Bufferin, you do the best you can.
Whatever happened to the fun of driving? Congestion happened. Pollution. Little accidents that cost too much. Allstate is determined to cut the cost of crashes and the slaughter on the highway. We must have your help, though. Will you help? Write the Safety Director, Allstate Insurance Company, Northbrook, Illinois, for a copy of Allstate's action plan called Let's Make Driving a Good Thing Again.
Profit takers were out in force as the New York Stock Exchange reversed itself sharply today. The Dow Jones Industrials were down almost 14 points, wiping out nearly one-third of the past 2 days' gains. Once again, trading was heavy, 20,700,000 shares. Automobiles, active big gainers yesterday, were active again today, but on the downside. The average price per share fell 57 cents on the New York Exchange and 12 cents on the American. Money markets were closed for the third straight day in Europe. Common market finance ministers meet in Brussels tomorrow, and France is proposing a complicated two-market money exchange system, one for ordinary trade, another for speculators. France and Italy have decided against any change in the value of the franc or the lire, at least for now. In Stockholm, finance officials from Norway, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, and Denmark are meeting on the same subject. The frenzy on the Japanese stock market has subsided, with stocks there having lost about 10% of their value over the 3 days, and officials insisting they will not revalue the yen upward. President Nixon, who was on a cross-country trip, made a pitch for his new economic plan in Illinois today. Dan Rather reports.
The consensus among Midwest political pros, including Republicans, seems to be that Mr. Nixon and the GOP are in some trouble in Illinois at the moment, partly because of a sluggish farm economy, but mostly because of a local state tax controversy involving Illinois Republican Governor Richard Ogilvie.
The president spoke at the old Springfield Capitol, where Abraham Lincoln made his famous "House divided against itself cannot stand" speech. Exactly as it was when he made his house divided. Resurrected or reproduced. There are a few alternative items.
Some who read my remarks and heard them interpreted them incorrectly along these lines. Well, finally, America is going to build a wall around itself. We've got these competitors abroad, but we're really not able to compete with them. And so we'll erect a wall around this country so that we can still go on, not competing, not trying quite as hard, not producing quite as much. I can tell you that could be a very popular theme unless we thought as Lincoln would have thought. for this great nation at this time to build a wall around itself, for it to withdraw from the competition of the world, for the United States of America to quit trying to be number one would be a very grave error.
Afterward, the president plunged into the crowd, which the local police chief estimated at 10,000. This part of Illinois is traditionally Republican. The crowd was warm and enthusiastic.
Tonight, the president flew on to Idaho Falls, Idaho, and Grand Tetons National Park near Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Tomorrow, he will haul his portable presidency to Dallas, Texas, where the school busing for integration issue is hot. Dan Rather, CBS News, with the presidential party.
All you need are some planter's nuts. All you need are some planter's nuts. All you need are some planter's nuts, and you'll have the whole world eating out of your hand. Planters, dry roasted using absolutely no fats or oils that add calories, or regular in the traditional blue cans and handy snack packs. Nutritious Planters.
Big or little, short or shaggy, all dogs suffer with fleas. The Hart's 90-day collar ends that suffering. Just put the collar on, and for 3 months, it kills fleas dead from his nose to his tail. Get the Hart's 90-day collar for dogs and cats. And to protect your bird from the torture of itchy lice and mites, get the new Hart's 90-day perch. Kills lice and mites for up to 3 full months.
Before he left New York City for the West this morning, President Nixon had breakfast with his old rival, Governor Nelson Rockefeller. But according to White House Press Secretary Ziegler, the session was definitely not political. No mention of a rumored Rockefeller move to the State or Defense Department. What they did discuss, said Ziegler, was the president's pledge of federal help for parochial schools, a pledge given off the cuff at last night's 89th annual meeting of the Knights of Columbus.
I myself did not have a Catholic education. My secretary did. I was telling Cardinal Cook and Mr. McDevitt on the way in that in my travels to over 70 countries with Mrs. Nixon, my secretary, of course, Rosemary Wood, is always gone. And there's never been a Sunday in all of those travels, and some of them have taken weeks and months, when she didn't go to Mass. Something else. She's a very fine secretary, but she also has very great character. She grew up in a family of modest income, a large family. She went to a Catholic school, a Catholic grammar school, a Catholic high school. And just looking at my secretary, and I think John Mitchell and John Volpe will bear me out, if that's what Catholic education does, I'm for more of it. Good. And, as Cardinal Cook has pointed out, at a time we see those private and parochial schools which lay such stress on these religious values, as we see them closing at the rate of one a day, we must resolve to stop that trend and turn it around, and you can count on my support to do that.
President Nixon's assurance on parochial school aid has created as much mystification among his subordinates as his statement that he's for desegregation but against busing. Everybody's uptight about talking back to the president on the record, but education officials say privately they have absolutely nothing in the works to try to get around the Supreme Court's ruling against aid to parochial schools. Catholic parochial school leaders who also want to remain anonymous go further. One prominent leader told CBS News, the administration isn't doing a darn thing. We have met with the president twice, and he has said some very nice things about parochial schools, but there is no action. We have outlined ideas for parochial school aid that we think would be legal. Tax credits, a version of the GI Bill, aid based on benefit to the individual child. But nothing is happening, and we can only assume the president's statement was for political or rhetorical effect. That's a quote. Officials are saying similar things about President Nixon's anti-busing statement, which created the impression there would be no more federal funds for busing. In fact, money for transportation is still included in emergency desegregation grants, and it will only be banned in the $1.5 billion desegregation bill if the administration's proposed amendment is adopted. Officials believe it will be rejected by the Senate and thus become another gesture. Daniel Shaw, CBS News, Washington.
The Nixon administration today asked the Supreme Court to delay a desegregation plan for the Corpus Christi, Texas public schools, which would require busing 15,000 students. The original plan was proposed by the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. The Corpus Christi School Board claims it's unable to provide the buses necessary to comply with the HEW plan. Alabama Governor George Wallace today issued his third order to intervene in a federal school desegregation plan. That plan pairs all black Hobson City with predominantly white nearby Oxford and assigns all pupils in grades 1 to 3 to Hobson City and the rest to Oxford. But under Wallace's intervention, each community would retain a 12-year school system with attendance on based on what he called a non-discriminatory basis. At the Pentagon, Army officers are checking into new accusations that U.S. troops committed atrocities in Vietnam. Bob Schieffer reports.
The Army is quietly investigating allegations that U.S. soldiers in the Americal Division set fire to the bodies of enemy soldiers in the aftermath of a battle that took place this spring. The incident reportedly occurred after American forces were attacked March 28 at Fire Base Marianne, a U.S. artillery outpost in the northern sector of South Vietnam. 35 Americans were killed and 76 wounded in the attack. Many of the casualties occurred when a single mortar round struck an American bunker. According to the allegations now being investigated, the bodies of some enemy soldiers were stacked in a pile after the attack and set afire. The number of enemy bodies could not be learned, but it was thought to be less than 6. Such mutilation is in violation of the Geneva Convention and Army regulations. Investigators are also checking reports that once the incident came to light, certain persons in the division sought to suppress it. The commander of the Americal Division at the time of the attack, Major General James Baldwin, was relieved of command amid charges that the base was poorly defended. The Army gave no reason for Baldwin's transfer. However, in response to query today, the Army said he had been reassigned to the Pentagon Personnel Office. In a brief statement today, the Army said an investigation had been conducted into the enemy attack on the fire base. It said the investigation was now being reviewed at the Pentagon, and no further details could be given at this time. The general was unavailable for comment. Bob Schieffer, CBS News, Washington.
Heavy fighting raged today in South Vietnam, not far from the demilitarized zone. US B-52 bombers flew their biggest raid in a year, hitting 8 targets inside and just south of the DMZ. Aided by those attacks, Allied forces fought a pitched battle with larger North Vietnamese units near Firebase Sarge, one of a number of bases that has come under attack recently by the Communists. 141 of the enemy were reported killed, and South Vietnamese dead were put at 22. The governments of Australia and New Zealand said today they will withdraw their remaining military forces from South Vietnam by the end of the year. They are able to pull out, officials said, because South Vietnam is becoming increasingly able to defend itself. New Zealand has only about 280 men left in Vietnam, but the Australians, with 5,800 men there, until recently were responsible for the security of a coastal province just east of Saigon. The tiny town of Pagnitz in Bavaria, West Germany, was the scene today of the worst helicopter accident the U.S. military has ever had in Europe. A giant Chinook chopper carrying 37 U.S. soldiers and crewmen on a training exercise exploded 1,000 feet in the air and crashed, killing everyone on board. The Army is now trying to determine the cause of the disaster. CBS News correspondent Richard C. Hodlett reports tonight the government of Taiwan has undergone a change of heart and is apparently ready to accept a two-China policy for the United Nations. Hodlett adds the nationalist Chinese may be gambling that if a two-China policy is adopted, Peking would, true to its word, not take a seat alongside Taiwan.
Monday.
And a great day for great coffee.
Yours.
No, Taster's Choice from Nestle. It's the freeze-dried coffee that looks, smells, sounds, and tastes like ground roast coffee.
Ground roast. If it does, I'll drink to that. It does. I'll drink to that.
And you'll be late for work.
I'll drink to that, too.
To my mother.
I'm late for work.
Now, open your eyes to a more soothing Clear. Clear Eyes gets rid of red, stays in eyes longer to be more soothing. Here's why. This is the leading eye drops. This, Clear Eyes with exclusive formula. After dropping, the leading drops run quicker. Clear Eyes stays longer, just as it stays in your eyes, is more soothing. Clear Eyes gets rid of red, stays in eyes longer to be more soothing. New from Urine.
There was renewed violence today in Northern Ireland, even as Prime Minister Brian Faulkner flew to England for talks aimed at ending the strife. British soldiers killed 2 more gunmen, one in Londonderry, the other in nearby Strabane, to raise the 10-day death toll to at least 28. In addition, 2 members of the Northern Ireland Parliament were arrested as they allegedly led a mob that was blocking troops who were trying to demolish street barricades. 3 law officers were wounded today in a shootout with black militants in Jackson, Mississippi. Del Vaughn reports.
The shooting started just after dawn. Before it ended 20 minutes later, 2 Jackson City policemen and an FBI agent were wounded. 1 policeman is in critical condition. Police allegedly came to the black separatist headquarters to serve warrants for the arrest of 4 occupants. Officers say they knocked at the door, announced their presence, and without warning, shooting started from inside. 1 officer fell at the door. Another city policeman and an FBI agent were wounded as they exchanged shots with someone in a side window. Police poured tear gas into the building, driving the 7 occupants outside. They were charged with assault with intent to kill. FBI agent Elmer Lindbergh talked with newsman Jack Hobbs.
Inside the house, we found 2 bombs triggered, ready to go. And there's a tunnel under the house. It's filled with gas, and as soon as the gas clears, the tunnel will be completely searched. The gas, of course, is down in there now.
The bombs were made of shotgun shells and other explosives. A military demolition team defused the devices and later destroyed them. The police search of the house and tunnels found under it continued until late afternoon. The 7 blacks arrested at the house and 4 others arrested nearby remain in custody. Del Vaughn, CBS News, Jackson.
We'll have a look at another side of the Jackson racial story in a moment.
That's me, Betty Grable, movie star, dancing up a storm in 1943. That's me, Betty Grable, grandmother, and loving it in 1971. And one of the reasons I'm loving it is because I take good care of myself. I exercise, eat the right foods, get enough rest, and to make sure I get enough iron and vitamins, I start every day with a Geritol tablet. Geritol is one of the nice things I do for myself.
Geritol, every day. Who needs this? Do you have to put up with the night when you're the only one in the house who can't get to sleep? You don't. When you sometimes take too long to fall asleep, take Sominex to help you sleep. Sominex contains 3 ingredients. It gently helps you relax. It helps make you drowsy. Take Sominex and sleep. Sleep. Sleep.
Until recently, the best chance of bettering one's life for a Negro in Jackson, Mississippi, or elsewhere in the Deep South was to go north. But now things are changing both in the North and the South. And some of Mississippi's black sons, including one famous one, are coming home. Foster Davis reports.
Not so long ago, this man was among the tens of thousands of blacks who fled the South for a better life up north. He is James Meredith, the man who desegregated the University of Mississippi in those bloody, bitter days of the early 1960s. In 1966, he was shot from ambush on a Mississippi Civil Rights March. Now he plays golf in the hot Mississippi sun. He has left New York and come south to live. Meredith is a distributor here for a line of soap products.
You can drive all over Jackson and you won't find filth cluttering the streets, and even the poorest and the most congregated of the black community. But anywhere you have blacks in any number, in any city I've ever been in, I mean, the filth is just unbelievable. And this is the, and of course with that, the crime, the insecurity. I mean, kids can't go where they want to, adults either for that matter, without the fear of something happening. I was in Detroit, as a matter of fact, I just got back. And the mayor of Detroit had just came out to visit one of the ladies a couple doors from where I was. She'd been robbed 19 times in 18 months. And, of course, she'd made all kind of complaints. Of course, the mayor said he never received any of them. But 19 times, people afraid to leave home unless someone remains home.
Those who return here to Jackson come to a town that was once one of the roughest of southern towns for blacks. In some ways, it still is. This is not the millennium. But the trappings of segregation have disappeared, and blacks now no longer walk with their eyes fixed on the sidewalk. And a black man doesn't automatically get only a menial job. Consider Elijah Davis, 45, married, 6 children. He left Jackson in 1950 to live in Gary, Indiana. Now he has come home. He has a service station on one of Jackson's main streets. A few years ago, he couldn't have done it.
I left for the same reason I came back. I left looking for peace and to get away from fear. And that's the same reason I returned. The time that I left, the fear came from the other side, and the time that I come back, the fear came from just the object.
Some younger blacks are returning. This is 28-year-old Roosevelt Davis. He's helping his father build a church here. He was a defensive end for the New York Giants until torn ligaments ended his career in 1968. He moved to Detroit. Then, 3 months ago, he came home. Eventually, he'd like a coaching job in the South. Coming home is a life's dream for others. 26 years ago, Robert Salone left Mississippi for Minnesota. Then, in 1960, he bought this property near Jackson, hoping someday to return. Last week, he did return. Now he's clearing the years of weeds and brush, planning to build his home here. Foster Davis, CBS News, near Jackson, Mississippi.
About 250 years ago, a Spanish sailing ship, the San Fernando, sank in a hurricane off Marathon, Florida. Near the site, a salvage company recently found and raised a huge wooden chest and assigned a marine archaeologist to get it open. The archaeologist got most of the job done today and found the insides jammed only with sailmaker's needles. The salvage company says it doesn't care about treasure. It only hopes the rest of the box will yield historically interesting artifacts. But the archaeologist predicts it will yield only more needles. As for his employers, he said, optimism springs eternal in the hearts of all treasure hunters. That's the news this Wednesday night. This is Roger Mudd, CBS News, New York.
If you ever suffer from acid indigestion, this little tablet contains one of the most effective medicines ever discovered for it. In tests at a famous college, it proved to neutralize excess acid in a matter of seconds. Prepared for a little shock, it's Tums, now in 5 flavors. It'll make your stomach feel better now.
If you're looking for a great car deal at those summer sales, remember, it takes a great car to make a great car deal.